She's an international business consultant and the founder of Ubuntu World Consulting. She comes from Romania. Her global experience in business and policy frameworks will provide us valuable insights into promoting inclusive growth. Moving on, Kyle Inan. He's the CEO of KI Asset Management Company from Turkey. With extensive experience in asset management and investment strategies, he offers a unique perspective on aligning financial practices and inclusive growth objectives. He's also a geopolitical analyst, and in his free time, he also performs. And he might have a surprise for us actually tonight. I invite you all to come and witness that spectacle. Mr. Masroor Arifin, he's the Managing Director of Citibank Bangladesh, a pioneer in leveraging technology for banking services. His practical experience in digital financial inclusion is highly relevant to our topic. And finally, Mr. Ghulam Mohammed Algomir. He's the chairman of Max Group, and Professor Karori Singh. He's the former director and emeritus fellow at the South Asia Studies Center, University of Rajasthan, India, a renowned scholar. His deep understanding of socio-cultural factors and economic development will definitely enrich our discussion. And finally, last but not least, engineer Ghulam Mohammed Algomir. He's the chairman of Max Group and vice chairman of Bengal Commercial Bank, Bangladesh. He has extensive experience in industrial development and banking and brings a unique perspective on the intersection of infrastructure, finance, and inclusive growth. We gather here at a time when the global economic landscape is marked by profound disparities. The gap between the rich and the poor continues to widen, posing significant challenges to poverty reduction efforts and exposing vulnerabilities within our financial systems. In many parts of the world, economic growth has not translated into equitable prosperity, leaving large segments of the population marginalized. Our session today centers on the critical role that resilient banking systems and inclusive growth strategies play in addressing these challenges. Resilient banking refers to financial systems that are robust, adaptable, and capable of withstanding economic shocks while continuing to serve all segments of society. Inclusive growth emphasizes economic expansion that benefits every layer of society, and especially the underprivileged. We have identified 5 interconnected themes to guide our discussion during this session. The first one is technological innovation and digital financial inclusion. We'll be talking about mobile banking, digital wallets, and fintech innovations, and how they're bringing banking services to the remote and underserved areas. In Bangladesh, for example, we have a good example. Platforms like bKash have transformed access to financial services, enabling millions to participate in the formal economy. However, this digital revolution presents challenges, ensuring that all segments of society, including those in rural and impoverished areas, is essential to prevent further widening of the digital divide. We also have, on the other hand, cybersecurity risks that can undermine trust and stability in the financial systems. Furthermore, the regulatory frameworks must adapt swiftly to keep pace with technological advancements. Our second policy theme is policy framework and regulatory environments. Effective policies and regulations are the backbone of a resilient system, and governments play a pivotal role in creating environments that encourage financial inclusion while safeguarding consumer interests. Initiatives like India's, and I hope I don't massacre the name, Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana demonstrate how policy can expand financial access to millions, integrating the unbanked into the financial system. The challenge lies in fostering innovation without compromising security and stability. Our third theme is the role of microfinance and community banking. Microfinance institutions and community banks are instrumental in reaching the unbanked and underserved. By providing small loans and tailored financial services, they can empower individuals and foster entrepreneurship, fueling grassroots economic development. And Bangladesh is actually a very good example in that respect. And Bangladesh has demonstrated that microfinancing can have a very positive effect on economic development. Our fourth theme is sociocultural factors and financial literacy. And here we will touch upon cultural barriers such as mistrust of formal banking and restrictive gender norms, and enhancing financial literacy as an essential element to empower individuals to make informed decisions. Also, designing financial products that respect and align with local customs and values is crucial. Our fifth and final theme is resilience in the face of global economic challenges. And here we'll touch upon global shocks such as economic crises, pandemics, and climate change, and how they affect and how important it is to build robust banking systems as crucial to promote long-term stability and growth. These themes are deeply intertwined and will form the basis of our discussion today. We will start first with a question to Professor Karori Singh. And Professor, you have taught and described poverty as a social construct influenced by human institutions, policies, and cultural attitudes. Could you please elaborate on how this understanding changes the way we approach poverty eradication, and how can financial systems address both the structural and cultural aspects of to foster inclusion?
My interest in microfinance and financial sector component of poverty generated when one of my PhD students from Sri Lanka is on the faculty of Ruhuna University in Southern Province. When he was writing his PhD thesis, he studied three Southern Province districts in the context of three main agencies of microfinance. That is public sector agencies, cooperative, and private companies. And I have seen very interesting findings. But ultimately, he concluded that microfinance is one of the most important relief measures in helping the poor. But it is not so much successful in generating investable surpluses unless or until microfinance generates investable surplus. There cannot be sustainable poverty eradication. So, apart from this microfinance, I have a general interest in poverty study and spent so much time in studying poverty. And during the course of my study, I discovered that we have highly inadequate understanding of poverty and inappropriate policies and strategies to eradicate it. And the poverty center's global discourse is still very weak. Whatever the poverty discourse we talk at the global level, that is the relief measures to the poor. And quite often we confuse the relief measures as poverty eradication. To helping the poor, we consider it as a measure of poverty eradication. Here we are committing some mistake, and the mistake is relief measure is not sustained poverty eradication. Because the global discourse is centered around 5 major themes. That is the financial architecture, global general financial architecture, inequality within the nations and between the nations, climate change and financing climate change. And fourth one is the conflicts within the state and interstate conflicts. And Fifth is the technological advancement and digitalization. But how the measures around these five themes are pro-poor, that is the questionable things. So I am making a plea to bring back poverty in the center of global discourse. So when we discuss poverty at the intellectual level and at the practical level to eradicate it, we have three main perspectives. First, the primordial perspective, which has two components, the religion-based approaches and the natural condition-based approaches. And the second, modern perspective, which believes poverty as a social condition. There are two components, ideological approaches and the techno-academic approach. The third one is the blended perspective. And all these perspectives, when we try to study and understand the poverty, the policies and strategies are most inadequate. Then I have prepared certain slides, but which cannot be displayed due to paucity of time. So the nature of poverty is quite often we consider several components like lack of opportunity, lack of finances, deprivation, and so on. And we collectively call it poverty. But the aggregation of these components is not more than, less than the poverty. Because poverty is not merely aggregation of these components, but the sum of these components is altogether different in terms of poverty, because it has some psychological, intellectual, and human dignity components. And these human dignity components are somewhat ignored in the poverty studies and even in the microfinance activities. And for that matter, I think the chief advisor of the Bangladesh government, Mohammad Yunus, while speaking at the Baku conference 3 days back, gave his vision of a new civilization based on 3 zeros. And again he repeated the same vision here this morning. I think that bears some significance. Because we should not be having a sort of hawkish presentation and the state interest-centric approach while we are talking poverty eradication and the microfinance. Our approach must be human-centric, humanitarian approach. And that approach is lacking, I think, in most of the poverty eradication programs. So in the overview, what should I say? Most of the countries are in the dilemma of essentialism of welfareism and instrumentality of capitalism. So most of the countries and the policy planners are trying to harmonize the two, the essentialism and the instrumentality. So the poverty eradication is being discussed and furiously debated, but the problem is we are discussing and the political administrative elite is talking about poverty as a political rhetoric in a democratic process. The poverty eradication is a liability, obligation, and sometimes utility for the political administrative elite. It's not exactly the poverty eradication. For that, we must have some kind of humanitarian approach in terms of poverty. So the poverty, direct poverty eradication measures, what we call as poverty eradication, are just relief measures. So what had been the overall impact of all the governmental policies on poverty eradication and how the poor people are having self-confidence and they are having their dignity, that is still in the question. So, though the global community has abiding commitment towards SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, but yet to develop collaborative institutional mechanism for direct poverty eradication, not merely relief measures in poorer countries. And here I must go for introspection. Our intellectual and academic community is less sensitized towards poor. It has been revealed by the Times Higher Education Report 2023. The publication, research and publications on campuses are lowest on poverty. It's a 5-year survey in which the Times Higher Education Report had mentioned only 71,000 publications. Whereas in regard to other sustainable goals, like the SDG 3rd, that is health and well-being, there are 21 lakh publications. So the poverty eradication must be broad-based on the campuses. Though we are talking poverty eradication, we are debating, everything is going on. But when we come to the evidence, I think that it's not the encouraging picture. Though the poverty eradication is the first goal among the 17 SDGs, but in terms of the research and study, it's the last one out of the 17 goals. And moreover, the impact of various government, the various strategies like the foreign investment. Quite often governments are having foreign direct investment policies and mobilizing the investment. But the evidence reveals that the association is positive over the long run. But there is no causal relationship between trade and poverty eradication. The globalization and poverty eradication have a long-term convergence. In the short term, there is no convergence. The tourism, which includes travel, hospitality, consumption, and accommodation, tourism has a diversified results and evidence about in terms of poverty eradication. Microfinance, of course, is failing in generating surplus, investable surplus, and on digitalization, there is no substantial study about how it is providing relief to the poor. Rather, it is creating the digital divide and new kind of inequality in different societies. So,
Mr. Singh,
there is a need for global cooperation and collaboration for sustained poverty eradication, and for which I think both the academic elites and the politico-bureaucratic elites must take a lead. Thank you very much, Chairman.
thank you. Please don't exhaust all your speaking points. We'll come back to you. We have a few more questions for you. Moving on, we'll start with the only lady at our panel. Ana Maria, your company specializes in expanding operations in industries like green energy and the circular economy. How do you see resilient banking systems supporting businesses in these sectors to promote sustainable, inclusive growth?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's both privilege and responsibility to be here today and address this most critical challenge challenge of our humanity. Humanity wonder the gap between the poor and the rich. I can give practical example because I'm a business consultant. So in Europe, we start like 4 or 5 years ago with the banking system, offering, with the government offering loans for green energy, renewable and wind energy. The government supports a lot this part beside the green climate change, circular economy, especially recycling plants. And I was thinking to Bangladesh, because you have the garment here, what a great idea to launch business in this area, because it's the future and you can be the pilot project for the world, let's say, in the recycling garments, even those that are the most polluted garment in this area. So regarding the banking system, they offering a lot of loans, you know, in parallel with the government. Let's say the government launch a program to offering a program for green energy that we had this year. And once the company that can be a startup, let's say, not only the small, medium companies or the big corporation. Here we speak about startups. So somebody that has a plot and wants to put solar panels can have a loan from the government, and once the loan is approved, you open a line loan from the bank. So you can have also the loan from the government and also plus from the banking system. So this is more security, you can get this. And this is very important money, let's say, and help a lot. Romania is becoming one of the first European countries in solar panels. But this is all about regulations. So we follow the European regulations. So like always say, every nation, I don't know, in Bangladesh, the government should really have collaboration with stakeholders, private stakeholders in green energy, and create a plan strategic how we can tackle green energy, climate change in Bangladesh. This is the way to have a formal plan for the future, and also to come the banks and others, let's say university, because play a very important role. Like I was speaking in the breakfast with some students from Dhaka University, and I was sharing my expertise in Romania. I think the university, and to tackle the poverty, is on the school, on the communities, on the mayor should be going more and more to the rural area and explain, because they are very close to the nature. They understand maybe better than a business person how to tackle the climate change. Really, I believe this. I would, even you don't have really education. I think I'm coming from the rural area, and even if I didn't have the education, I will understand better, let's say, how to protect the nature, how to grow farms, vegetables, and so on. So in my opinion, this is what I have to say for the moment.
The importance of policy making combined with the intellect of the academia, but
yes.
also the grassroots initiatives.
Yes, because all three, governments, university, banks, and less fortunate people can tackle together. You just make an incubator or a cluster, or I don't say, a cooperative.
Thank you.
But they have to share, because the government should learn also, because they change all of 4 or 5 years. So I have to tackle it. Yeah.
Thank you for that unique perspective. Coming back to Bangladesh, and I'll address Mr. Arifin. How is Citibank utilizing the technological innovations to enhance financial inclusion in Bangladesh, particularly for the unbanked and the underbanked populations?
Thank you.
I think you have to turn it on. Yeah.
It's working? Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, everyone. My co-panelists, thank you for being here in Bangladesh. Alamgir Bhai is only another Bangladeshi person on the stage. I represent the banking sector here in this talk today. With regard to the unbanked population, yeah, we have huge number of unbanked population, no doubt. You know, like say in Citibank itself, the bank that I lead, there are only 3 million active customers, whereas the population of the country is 180 million or so. So that tells you clearly, how much of financial inclusion we could successfully do so far. Different banks are running different programs. The results are yet to be seen. But the thing is that, in the meantime, the MFS, Mobile Financial Services Revolution, has happened in this country. It's the country of bKash, alongside M-Pesa Kenya. This is the largest mobile financial services company on earth. Now, Citibank, we have recently partnered with bKash, recently meaning 3 years ago, for the first digital nano loan in Bangladesh, based on the model that I myself learned along with the bKash CEO in Tanzania and Kenya and Zanzibar of Africa. So, interestingly, there I saw firsthand in banks like Equity Bank and other places, that at bank's total lending books, 30% comprises of digital nano loan, micro small ticket loans of around 10 to 15 days cycle. But in Bangladesh, we are way behind in terms of launching it. This is the first digital nano loan bKash and Citibank together have launched. Is the bKash's database, MFS customer database, and our Citibank's capital and credit risk. It's going on fine. So far there we have touched the lives of exactly 2 million people. They have taken small sums of 20,000 BDT, 15,000 BDT.
What's the difference between being able to implement it in Africa and lagging in Bangladesh? Are there any particular reasons, underlying reasons?
Underlying reasons for?
For not being able, for lagging in implementing
No,
it in
it's
Bangladesh.
about the thing that you believe in. It's still in Bangladesh, though bKash has come, but it's all about transferring his money to my bKash account. It's a money transfer machine. Now you need to up the game. Basically, the financial inclusion in this country has traditionally been about collecting or acquiring deposits of the marginal people. It was never like, giving anything to them in terms of credit, other than the NGOs, those who are giving, but they are giving at the rate of 25% per annum. But the banks can afford to give it at around 9%. And if there is central bank's programs of refinance and pre-finance, then it makes also even 9-10% interest rate very meaningful, because if I can get the fund as I'm getting for bKash Citibank digital nano loan at 1% from central bank, is still at 9%, I'm making 8%, which is okay. You don't need to be always, with this kind of programs. You cannot be too much P&L centric, profit and loss account centric. You have social responsibilities, and when the economy grows, and if you are helping the economy to grow, ultimate beneficiary is you. So, but the problem with Africa and Bangladesh between these two, if you compare, is that it's been going on there for a long time. So they have already perfected it as an art. It's about trusting that customer group. That like bKash Citibank Nano Loan, I don't know even one of these 2 million customers, because they are all on your mobile app of bKash. You go inside, and after 3-4 screens, it prompts like, that do you need a loan from Citibank? So these are bKash customers, and they are from far off places. They are not really urban people. They are like from different parts of the country, where a typical commercial bank, due to its profit and loss account related concerns, will not go and open branches. So I meant to say that to come back to the question, someday, one day, Bangladesh will graduate from this restrictive and very much self-centered thinking about financial inclusion, where you are basically wanting to attract deposit of the entire population's marginal group or low income group. But this is not fair. You need to give back. You need to give them access to credit. But what we are all doing is we are trying to only take the deposits, and we are trying to enjoy the float that they will offer us, and we would keep on lending to big corporates, and we will keep on opening LCs for big capital machineries and all that. So it's a mindset. the mindset is changing because, say for example, now the biggest MFS company and country is one of the best known banks, where IFC World Bank is the single largest shareholder in Citibank, and it's a very reputed bank in the country. Anyone can vouch for its brand name. The thing is, this kind of partnerships will encourage others, and also the digital banking licenses have been issued recently, but overall the scenario is pathetic. Pathetic, why I say that? Total reserve money, I'm sure you know the reserve money, the money printed money total is 32.14 billion US dollar equivalent Bangladesh Dhaka. Total printed money. Of that, mattress money is 23.62 billion US dollar. So out of 32 billion USD, 23 billion USD is the mattress money, meaning the money has been printed and those money are not coming back into the system. Mattress money is a symbolic way of saying that, money outside bank. Now you need to attract those people to actually come to the formal system. Now to do that, different programs must be launched, lending being one. Since you asked the question about that, so I answered that. But you need to also promote it's a habit building thing. You need to actually lure them into choosing a safer place, which are banks and other MFS companies. So it can go on and on. Overall, I would like to say that incentivization is very important. Overall, I would also like to say that, central bank's programs are very important. Central bank can eradicate lot of, legal hurdles and impediments in terms of, when an MFS company bring a deposit of far up places of very marginal people, they have a different KYC requirement, whereas we banks have a different set of KYC. It's not helping. It's ultimately creating a system where, banks are running after who already has money. Banks are running after middle class and upper segments, and as if the segments below middle class and up to the rickshawala people, the rickshaw pullers, is another symbolic representation of the lower income group, as if they need to be taken care of only by the NGOs. So this is another mindset whereby banks and NGO related the Chinese wall must break, and banks and NGOs must collaborate. Banks and telcos also must collaborate. Telcos have big data, and we deal with only basically urban people. But also in the banking sector, the microfinance is getting popular because rate advantage is there for those beneficiaries, because NGOs are charging 25 to 30%, whereas we banks are charging 9 to 10%. So this is an advantage, we must give back to the society, we must give back, and ultimately we will be benefited if we can say like Citibank can become a bank from 3 million people to a bank of 30 or say 40 million people, which is our dream, and we are seriously chasing it. We are now, Citibank's biggest project that is going on is not the CityTouch app-based internet banking that we have, but also we are going to launch a neo bank very soon, a bank within Citibank. So it's a core focus area of the bank. I think the number one focus area, which is confidential, but I just felt like saying it. Soon, within a year, you will see a neo Citibank, which is just in the model of Brazil's Nubank and the Equity Bank of Kenya, Tanzania. So we are coming up with that to actually break all these barriers.
Thank you. You raised some very interesting points and questions that we'll come back to. But since you've made some very interesting observations on the Bangladeshi market, I would like to ask Mr. Algomir, Engineer Algomir, as the as the Vice Chairman of the Bengal Commercial Bank. The bank itself also aims to provide specialized banking services to micro and small enterprises across Bangladesh. Could you perhaps also share with us some of the strategies that the bank employs to reach the underserved populations and support inclusive economic growth?
Thank you, Mr. Faris. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. When I am speaking in front of you, I think I have got some advantage because in the same panel we have professors, we have consultants for the banking sector, we have bank MD. So my responsibility of talking actual banking system and this resilience is, I will not touch. But I will say, as a businessman and as a partly owner of a bank, I can say how it should move and how it is moving specifically in our country. I mean, we know that if you want to destroy a country, you have to destroy its education system, destroy the judiciary, destroy the financial sector, and that is, our bank is the heart in there. So this banking system is the main driving force for the business people and the economy of the country. And this is being controlled by a controlling bank called Bangladesh Bank in our country. In last 53 years, we have done pretty good. And we have a lot of banks to serve the people and the business people. But still we need more banks and more extended hand to reach to the poor people and the people who cannot reach to the bank without collateral. So there must be some system where people cannot go to bank, but you go to the bank, you go to them and extend your help and money with money to borrow the money from you and pay back in time. I remember when I started business before 45 years, we used to go maybe 30, 40, 50 times to get a small loan. But nowadays, in our country, bankers are coming to us to take loan. It's not me only, any businessman, any good businessman who is a good performer, who has proven as a good banker, good businessman and trustworthy, money was not a problem in this country from the bank side. So that is the advantage and good thing we have done in last 53 years. But I thought it could be far better, and we still have time to improve that. I will say to improve further and further, the first thought has to come from the government itself. Government has to think that I will not dictate banking sector, meaning he will not dictate the finance minister or the Bangladesh bank governor to dictate the banks. Individual banks, these are called private banks. They should run their own banking system, which is a business for the investors and the shareholders. That should run very, very independently without interference by others. And as the owner of the bank, I can say against me also that the shareholders should not interfere the day-to-day running of the bank, and that bank should be handed over to the management of the bank, like managing director and his team, full team. And that is how the bank will run properly, and the skillness of the bank officers and the bank management will grow. But as a owner, if we dictate the management to give some loan to somebody who does not fulfill the criteria of the banking norms and guideline of the Bangladesh bank or the bank own guidelines, if we force them to give the loan, then those are the areas where it becomes a crisis, and for that bank and for that country. And in recent years, we have seen those things happened a lot, and We have learned a lot how to stop that in future, and I hope with the change of the situation, those things will be taken care of. Power should be given to the managers of the bank and bank management. They should run the bank, and when they have problem, they will come to the board to talk to the directors and take the big decisions. Now, when we are dictating, the skillness of the bankers is not being developed. And in other words, we are stopping our bank officers to grow themselves and exercise their knowledge and power, and they are being frustrated sometimes. And this was the result. We know, we do gossip, what happened in our country in some banks, few banks. So, another thing I would like to mention, the so-called Islamic bank. Yes,
Can
sir.
I interrupt you here? Can we just get another perspective, and we'll have another round of questions. Just another international perspective also from our colleague Kyle. If you could draw your conclusions.
Okay, the conclusion is, in the last 53 years, we have progressed in our banking sector quite well. And instead of ourselves as a borrower to go to bank repeatedly, now bankers are coming to us repeatedly to take loans. So it has grown. But I am saying we could grow faster, and we will grow faster in coming years. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your insights. Kyle, we've heard, we've identified the importance of resilient banking systems to protect the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
How do asset management firms like yours contribute to building these systems, especially in economies that are struggling with rising national debt?
Okay. Thank you so much, first, and thank you for the generous introduction. First and foremost, also allow me to express how privileged and honored I feel to be here today at the Bay of Bengal conversation with the brightest of minds here. Thank you so much. It is really important to discuss a topic that actually lies at the heart of our global economic future here, resilient banking system. But to understand resilient banking systems, we need to understand what national debt is. If we don't know what national debt is, there's no point in understanding what resilient banking system is. So, as we speak, many nations, rich and poor alike, are grappling with the rising burden of public debt, which continues to actually grow at an alarming rate. And I'll provide examples to this, so let me see if I can make this more vivid here. And while debt itself isn't inherently bad, the way it is managed and distributed across economies either fuels or hinders the economic progress. So we base everything on inclusive growth and economic resilience based on how we manage our debt. So we are living in a world that is extremely interconnected, owing to technology, and simultaneously that is increasingly both economically and socially divided. So the rich continue to amass greater wealth while the poorest remain mired in poverty, unfortunately. The gap between the two has never been wider. And unfortunately, this gap makes our financial systems even more vulnerable than ever. So around the world right now, the national debt has reached record levels, according to the IMF, and I'll give you 2023 stats here. The national debt, global national debt has reached $100 trillion, which actually is an insurmountable number, because then the debt goes into a self-perpetuating cycle of interest, adding interest, and compounding interest, and there's no way to solve this. So the idea, plus the debt to GDP ratios, which actually destroy people's PPP, purchasing power parities, and then these are dangerously high levels for the global economy. Now, unfortunately, these aren't just figures on a page, numbers on a page, but they represent the financial health of entire nations. And for millions of people, they represent, obviously, an uncertain future. So what is driving this debt? First and foremost, allow me to retrospectively go back to 2008, where we had the two mortgage lenders here, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They provided subprime mortgage loans to a point where, you know, they couldn't recollect those loans, and they almost spelled the doom for our entire financial system as the world as we know it. But then the government stepped in and tried to bail out all those financial institutions by providing $20 billion to $30 billion loans. But then again, that creates another perpetual cycle, because that goes into trickle-down economics, because the lion's share actually goes to the major shareholders and CEOs and top leadership, and the people who are marginalized or socially alienated, who are socially alienated from meaningful participation, get nothing but crumbs. So I don't think that's a possible system that can work. Another major factor that is driving this, that as we mentioned in the previous panels, war and conflict, ongoing war and conflict actually contribute a lot, like military spending and other major things contribute to national debts. So what happens is the more national debt a country has, the less it can offer to its citizens. So it becomes, again, a self-replicated perpetual cycle. Plus, you have inefficient governance, meaning poor fiscal policies, lack of financial accountability, and that actually exacerbates many of the debt levels in many countries. And previously it was also mentioned, we have the climate change, extreme weather events are also adding to this phenomenon, unfortunately. So I'm going to keep my time short and sweet. So true risk actually lies in the distribution of debt and its impact on the most vulnerable population. So we need to really need to move forward with an inclusive growth agenda and try to address these problems as soon as possible. Thank you.
Ana Maria, coming back to you, you've made some very interesting points earlier. You worked extensively with European funds.
Yes, exactly.
And state aid programs.
Yes.
Can you tell us how can such financial mechanisms be optimized to ensure that the benefits of economic growth reach the marginalized communities, especially in industries like green energy?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So regarding European Union funds covering absolutely all the sector, even the social sectors, I never worked for the social, more from green energy and industry, manufacturing. So in general, European Union offer funds, not really very big important funds, but still to run as a company. In general, you should have already a company and already have a profit and a good balance to participate and have this kind of funds. So in general, the European funds are not really for startups. The startups are more from the government side. So I believe in Bangladesh, this kind of solution will be great because, look, we entered European Union in 2007, and our country grew very rapidly since the last 10 years, and also with the foreign direct investment. So this coupled with foreign direct investments, European funds, but European funds help a lot to the small, medium companies to grow because the big corporations already, they are in the country because of the taxes and so on. So yeah, I believe that this kind of programs like, not really like European funds, but a little bit targeted how it's in Bangladesh country, which are their primary sectors. Because I know you have agriculture, the rice, here maybe you have less fortunate people in this area of sector, and here to invest more and give more loans. If there is not, if the government don't have possibility to offer money, you can extend to international collaboration, like UNED. I know that they are doing a lot of projects in this area, maybe collaboration between this organization to raising funds. Because in Europe, beside European funds, these are the raising funds. There are private companies, international organizations, especially in this part of green energy. Like embassies, also like PIBA, Holland, also participate offering in Romania and in other countries funds for green energy. If I answer.
So a combination of bilateral, multilateral financing mechanisms.
Yes.
Thank you. We're approaching the last 15 to 20 minutes of our session, and I'd like to also leave some time for our audience to ask questions. So moving on, I would like to ask our panelists to try to keep their answers as brief as possible. so we can have more time to go through more questions and also have some questions, entertain questions from the audience. Going back to Professor Singh, you've highlighted certain issues like foreign direct investment and microfinance and digitalization having various impacts on policy, on poverty eradication. Which sectors, in your opinion, should be prioritized in creating financial systems that balance resilience with inclusion, and why?
Whatever the nature of banking system, banks are not operating in a robotic manner. They are operating in a particular socio-cultural milieu. So the humanitarian consideration, the poverty eradication component must be on priority along with the financial service provider banking system. The second thing is important, how banking systems should function, whether it should be in a cooperative manner, it should be a private profit generating company, it should be under the public sector, because in different sectors, different models, there are diverse results. So we must have to develop some kind of consensus which model can be better, and whether there must be some kind of hybrid model to address the humanitarian issues, the pressing issues of finance to the weaker and marginalized sections, so there can be a sustainable poverty eradication. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Mr. Arifin, how does the Citibank deal with issues such as digital wallets, cybersecurity, digital literacy, and also, are you exploring other means of reaching the underserved, such as implementing new technologies like blockchain, for example?
Too much of talk going on about blockchains. We are all experimenting with it. Now, artificial intelligence is another keyword that we're chasing. You know, all these are important because when you are dealing with mass population, as opposed to what you do now, banking only for elites and middle class and upper section, as I said earlier, you know, there is a core difference. And there, basically now, if you want to do banking for unbanked population, when I said that in this country, it's a pity that total printed money is $32 billion equivalent BDT, whereas mattress money is $24 billion, meaning out of $32 billion we printed, $24 billion is now under the pillow in the cash form. They are not coming back to the system. Meaning people, in general, when you talk about people with P capital, they're rejecting the banking that we are doing. They're not coming back to the system. They are taking the full help of MFS for money transfers. But MFSs are also interesting. You know, they are basically courier companies. They are not giving loans. They are not licensed to give loans. And when you do not give loans to the marginal people and you only use them to, you know, basically suck up the deposits that they have at their homes and under their pillows and mattresses, I don't like that kind of a system. And in that kind of a system, when you want to graduate from system A to system B, a more equitable banking system, then the blockchain talk, you know, kinds of falls flat on his face. You know, like it sounds very laughable because you're not doing the basic. You're not doing the basic. Basic is with your mindset. You are believing that, you know, poor people should go to NGOs and only middle class and upper people should come to the banks. Now, I think more importantly than blockchain is to believe in data. You have data, you have telco data, telephone operator companies data. You have other big, you know, corporations data. And to mine those data, you need artificial intelligence to understand the needs and aspirations of those people. So now we are seriously working on machine learning. We are working on big data and we are working on AI. As I said that, you know, Citibank, CityTouch, digital banking, internet banking, it is actually, it's only for the 3 million people that is already a Citibank customers, and it is the country's largest and most popular internet banking app. This year transaction volume is going to be 1,20,000 crore BDT, which is 12 billion US dollar equivalent in Bangladesh Dhaka, just transacted on phone. But these are only for Citibank customers. The person who is in a far off place near to southern part of the country, lives in an island or near Sundarbans, they cannot use CityTouch because Citibank is obstructing them to come into CityTouch and basically telling them go to NGOs. Now the challenge is to break those barriers, as I said earlier, to open it, as I said, your question referred to, that we need a wallet. We need a banks, formal bank institutions need open wallet, like, Bikash has. And that's what, I am now chasing. Policy level is no issue because, earlier government and this government both have big agenda of, financial inclusion, which is good. And that's the reason policies are there. Problem is with the mindset of bankers and also the board of directors, but because of the popularity of CityTouch, because of Dr. Mohammad Yunus winning Nobel Prize on microfinance, and because it's a country where there are many NGOs thriving by giving microfinance loans with below 1% NPL, like in Citibank itself we have 9,000 crore BDT microfinance, the second largest microfinance bank in the country right now, with below 1% NPL, and Citi and Bikash digital nano loan is 0.6% NPL. These are great stuff that is happening, and this entire Citibank Bikash digital nano loan, it basically lives on data mining because these are Bikash customers. I will never see all those 2 million customers. I will never meet them. Certain data are talking on behalf of them, telling you that, yeah, he is creditworthy or not creditworthy. Now this notion of creditworthiness is also very much, messy notion. Because the credit scoring engines are actually, built by elites, built by traditional bankers, where ultimately you are again pushing the people, the basic fundamental question of inequality is not addressed. And banking system that we do, that we thrive in, that we make profit and give dividends and all that, current banking format, system, policies, regulations, guidelines are not pro-people. Not pro-people. I believe this is a pro-people government now, running the country after a popular uprising, a revolution. I believe in at the system level issues for women and lending to women, for marginal people, for people, those who have disabilities, those who couldn't go to school, and those who have not, doesn't have a degree, doesn't have an NID, national ID card. We should all think, how they can be brought into the system. The thing is, there are two dilemma here. One is the CSR program. If you talk too much about it, people will say, hey, Mashrur, give them CSR money. But, with CSR is charity. You cannot make something sustainable when you are doing charity. It has to make good sense for your balance sheet and your profit and loss account. Basically meaning, it's like standing at a crossroad where the balance between doing good things, doing utility and welfare for people, and balance between also taking care of the interest of your shareholders, this should be very much what you call it, judiciously tackled. There is no way of
seems that there is hope now in Bangladesh.
Of course, hope now, because I represent one of the largest.
Especially now that Bangladesh finds itself at a crossroads and can implement policies that are pro-people, as you've said. So this is a crucial moment in Bangladesh's history.
I'll say one last word. Why am I hopeful? I'm hopeful because it's the country of MFS companies. Everybody looks up to Bangladesh and Kenya, M-Pesa, Bikash. There is another thing called Nagad, which is now getting corrected. So this is the hope. This is the country for NGOs. But NGO lending, I don't believe in. They charge 25% to poor people. Not good, not at all good, but we banks charge 9 to 10% for microfinance, same lending, but our doors are closed, so there is a structural issue, underlying philosophical big problem. So, but I'm hopeful because so many things are happening, when students can topple a government in that country, there is no other way but to be hopeful. Thank you.
Thank you for that very impassioned commentary. I would like to ask a follow-up question on this topic to Mr. Algamir. What is the percentage of the remittances, if you know, in Bangladesh that actually go through the official banking system?
If I tell
And how
this-
important are remittances in Bangladesh?
I will say the most valuable asset and thing that we have is foreign remittance. Whatever export and whatever things you are getting, that is in paper-wise looks very high, but that's not net. Whatever is coming as a remittance from our foreign working Bangladeshis, expatriates, that's our net for the country. And that's the real asset we are living with. So during the crisis also, that is why in 2008, when during COVID, various crises happened in various world and various countries. We did not suffer because we had our remittance coming in almost in the same rate. So that's a good one good thing we have. And I will strongly recommend that the skilled people should be developed in the country, and those skilled people, before going overseas, should have a training of 6 months, 3 months, 9 months, then send them to overseas and they will send us double the money. Thank you.
Thank you. Kyle, you highlighted, I think, the need for public-private partnerships.
Yeah.
Could you share with us some examples of such collaborations and how successfully they've redirected debt resources toward education, healthcare, infrastructure, and development?
Sure, there's many countries in Europe actually who are making use of these funds for public-private partnerships. They're building bridges, hospitals, useful infrastructure and whatnot, and so far used to be worthy, but again, like I mentioned in my previous commentary, it adds up to a level where the interest rates become really insurmountable. So that's one aspect that really needs to be kept an eye on. We need more collaboration between nations and financial institutions and ensure that debt is actually effectively managed for long-term development and not for short-term relief also. So again, the entire idea being here is the well-being of citizens and fostering inclusive growth and nothing else. But while we're trying to foster economic growth, that doesn't mean we should ask for people's irresponsible borrowing from banks or financial institutions, monies that they cannot pay back, but it needs to be within a rational standard and setting. So that being said, we have the climate financing options as well, which I believe will link with the AI, artificial intelligence, very soon. In fact, I'll ask, if you look at the past 2 decades, again, retrospectively, how many of the companies in the US have passed the $1 trillion cap, and how many in Europe have not been able to do half of that? So that actually presents a very clear picture of where we stand, and we really need value-added production and not inflation in terms of trying to contribute to economic growth. Thank you. Thank you for this.
Thank you, Kyle. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a few more minutes. I'd like to open the floor for questions, if you have any for our panelists. I would kindly ask you to state who you're asking the question to, and please reach the microphone. We have microphones in the room.
Okay, so my name is Ho Chi Minh. I do work for transgender rights in Bangladesh. So I have one question, actually 2 questions. In Bangladesh and South Asia, transgender, hijra, and other gender diverse communities are among the most marginalized and vulnerable groups, often excluded from the formal education, employment, and access to financial resources. Systematic inequality, societal discrimination, and bureaucratic neglect mean that many lack proper identity documents, making it nearly impossible for them to open a bank accounts, access financial services, or secure business loan. At the same time, the financial system appears to favor the elite, granting them easier access to loan and resources while imposing strict and often prohibitive requirements on the poor and marginalized. As the World Bank highlights, inclusive financial systems are critical for reducing poverty and promoting shared prosperity. How will the banking sector address this disparity and ensure that transgender individuals and other vulnerable groups can access essential financial service and business loans without excessive barriers? implement to promote financial equity and empower these communities to participate in economic growth on equal footing. I also have a specific question, if I ask specifically to Mr. Arifin, that Citibank have any plan to recruit transgender and gender diverse population, as we are talking here a lot about equity and inclusivity, because this is the most marginalized community in this country and in the South Asian region.
Could you also just please specify who the first question was for?
I think both can answer, Mr. Arifin or Mr. Alamgir.
Okay, let me take the question because interesting question. To come to the transgender population, only last week we decided that we'll be hiring because as I earlier said that World Bank's IFC financial arm is the single largest shareholder of Citibank. So they have, the Washington DC office has given me a diversity and inclusion D&I charter, which I must follow. So that basically tells that, you know, we should be hiring transgender population in Citibank very soon, meaning within next 1 month. So this is one. And the other things that I said, that you have asked, said, the bureaucratic neglect towards poor, the difficulties of poor coming to banks, the poor getting terrified seeing beautiful bank branches. These are all true. These are all well talked about issues. Inequality is, I believe, the most talked about, now researched after Amartya Sen winning Nobel Prize in economics, and also the big book, the Capital, the French writer, I forgot the name, the basics of inequality, those few, red cover book, the famous one, a small one, Thomas Piketty. So they have actually popularized the subject, which is good. Now everybody in Bangla, we call it Boishammo. Actually, the entire movement was Boishammo Birodhi Chhatra Andolon. So the student movement against inequality. Meaning, is very much core to our heart, very much in our aspiration level. It's kind of guides, and these are the lighthouse milestones for us. Now, the sector, this is not a sectoral issue. This is more of a structural issue. This is the Banking Company Act, guidelines, regulations issue. But as I said that, we cannot be participative, inclusive kind of social, welfare-seeking good citizens if we only say that something is your responsibility. The responsibility is also lies with us jointly, the bankers and the stakeholders. The stakeholders being Central Bank and Securities and Exchange Commission, the NGO Affairs Bureau, the National Board of Revenue, because taxation is another issue, like when you asked me to go to the marginal sector and I will be taking credit risks of higher category because I may not know the people I am dealing with in terms of offering them loans and credits, then the issue becomes, digitally how savvy you are. Meaning, if you are not really savvy, you are taking bigger credit losses risk. Meaning, you may end up hurting your own depositors and shareholders in the long run. So the whole thing is, I'm very happy that today at Bay of Bengal conversation, we are talking about all this, meaning, I am feeling really charged up. We got to deal with this with ministries, with finance ministry and others. And there are great models that we can follow also. In India, one model was successful. Pakistan's ESAS program, I don't know if you know about it, a very world famous program for school going kids, for nutrition. Bankers are leading it, all these nutrition program, school, sending kids to school program, the COVID related, the financial support program, which Bangladesh has also done, to be honest. But Bangladesh's COVID money has gone only to the big corporates, not to them so much. Of course, there are certain programs run for them, but those are also medium segment customer group, not really the segment that, you just talked about. So issues are there. I can go on and on and on, but
Unfortunately,
we need to now get into
we don't
action.
have time to go on and on and on.
Yeah.
It is definitely a topic that we could spend hours delving into and going both horizontally and vertically. I encourage.
The last sentence, to the moderator and to you also, what we should do is we should believe in Nike. Let's do it. The Nike's famous logo, the brand payoff line is let's do it. We talk more. Bengalis, we talk more.
I encourage everybody, if you have questions and if you're still around at the conference, the panelists, I encourage you to approach them and talk to them in private as well and during the breaks as well. I was informed that our session is closing, it's coming to an end. We have time for just one brief last question. And if you could just please briefly state what your question is and who it's directed to.
Thank you so much. My name is Peter Topichkano from Russian Academy of Sciences, Moscow. My question is about new technologies, as it was mentioned by speakers about their opportunities provided for banking and for helping poor people to get access to money. But also they open opportunities for cybercrime, for crime in financial area, to target poor people. And my question is very simple, but I don't know who want to take it. What are the priorities in this area right now to deal with new technologies to prevent these crimes on national level and on regional level? Thank you so much.
That's an important question. I'm not sure that we have the policy level at the panel to be able to answer that question. But if anybody is willing to take that question, please.
Just in one line, I can answer it that cybersecurity is a key area. Fraud management, cybersecurity from Bangladesh, that 81 million US dollar from central bank reserves had flown into the, Pacific region of the world. So, we are very careful. We follow lot of ISO standards and other standards. So far, no accidents has happened to any of the banks who are dealing with digital money. That's one. Another thing is, what Alamgir Bhai has said, Bangladesh is dependent on remittances very much. We get 25 billion US dollar of foreign remittance, which is almost 1/3 of country's total import. So 1/3 depends on people sending money to us. So vocational training, when you're talking about doing something for marginal people. These are marginal people working in toilets and streets of different other first world countries. So, for them, we are sending mostly untrained people, but now the government is working seriously. I can only be hopeful about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, the time for our session has elapsed. I wish we had more time, and I think there was plenty more to be said at this session. As I said, please feel free to approach the panelists and talk to them directly during the off hours or during the breaks. I would like to thank you for being here, for listening to this session. I would like to thank my panelists. It was a pleasure moderating, and enjoy the rest of the day. And congratulations once more on a wonderfully organized event. And let's see the Bay of Bengal conversation grow into something even bigger, and I've witnessed it grow year over year, and it's growing substantially now. Congratulations one more time to Zilur.
No doubt it was an enlightening session. Now I would like to request our speakers and moderators for a group session. Please stand forward.
Thank you so much, the speakers. So it was all we know that Bangladesh has recently experienced a very tremendous changes in the government system. The remarkable uprising of the students and the masses in July this year brought about a profound changes in the government system of Bangladesh. So the driven by the demand for non-discrimination, equality, and justice. To honor the spirit of this movement, the people of Bangladesh entrusted a group of noble people led by Professor Dr. Muhammad Yunus to steer the nation forward. Among these distinguished individualists, one name shines prominently, Professor Asif Nazrul. It's my honor to invite Mr. Asif Nazrul, the advisor of Ministry of Law, Justice and Parliamentary Affairs, the Minister of Expertise, Welfare and Overseas Employment of Bangladesh. Mr. Asif Nazrul. Yes, sir.
Sorry, I was not ready. I didn't understand that I have to say something right now. But it's fortunate for me that it's almost evening and people are dozing. Some of them are giving crazy and angry look to me. I will be very short, don't worry. I think you all know, especially the foreign delegates here, that we have entered into a new episode of history in Bangladesh. And through the sacrifice of our students and general people, we have been granted a unique opportunity of rebuilding our country, rebuilding the state institutions. And we have already taken the initiative of reforms in various sectors. And I hope you know that we have already formed a media reform commission in order to look into the media, means print media, social media, and every type of media. We have also formed a number of other commissions linked with the election issue, and there is police reform commission, we have anti-corruption commission, and above all, we have a constitutional reform commission. We have also declared the policy decision of repealing Cybersecurity Act, and we have already announced that all the cases regarding allegation of speech offense, this will be discontinued or withdrawn, and only the computer offenses will continue because this is very much needed in order to ensure cybersecurity. And we are going to make a new law which will penalize only the computer offenses, not the speech offenses. And it will be done very soon, maybe in next couple of days, in next week. And most importantly, during our rule in last 3 months, not a single case was instituted under the Cybersecurity Act. To be more correct factually, only one case was instituted, and that was about our chief advisor, Dr. Muhammad Yunus, and another advisor, Nahid Islam. And we have already instructed the concerned authority not to continue that case because it was the desire of Dr. Yunus and Nahid Islam that they don't want to allow anyone to file a case using their name under the Cybersecurity Act. We have already expressed our commitment to freedom of expression, freedom of press in various occasions. And with all this, we are confronting with the problem of disinformation and misinformation, which will be the central theme of next session, I believe. I mean, a couple of days ago, there was a study, most probably, if I can correctly remember, done by Dismiss Lab, right? And they found out, their study found out that during July to September, there had been nearly 1,000 incidents of disinformation and misinformation. And it was threefold greater than the July-September of last year. And you may be surprised to know that who is the most frequent victim of that disinformation and misinformation? It's not the fallen fascist Sheikh Hasina. It's the caretaker government chief, Dr. Muhammad Yunus. Even in my cases, I mean, at least in every 3 days, there will be one big incidents of misinformation or disinformation about me. I would say disinformation, not misinformation, because these informations are spread with an intention to mislead people and to create instability. And sometimes some of the disinformation, these are so, I mean, it has many type of consequence. I'm just giving you a lighter example. A couple of weeks ago, there was a rumor in the social platform that me, with my children, with my wife, we are running away from Bangladesh and taking shelter in America. I first failed to understand why, after becoming an advisor of 3 ministries, somebody will run away from a country with all his family. I just failed to understand. But it was so widely spreaded that when I said my wife that I will accompany you and I will go to the airport, she said, please don't go, because people will believe that you are running away from Bangladesh. Raju Mahajan Bhai is here. He knows some of the stories. So the point I'm trying to make, that when we encourage freedom of expression, freedom of press, the risk of misinformation and disinformation, we have to confront, we have to address this problem always. And disinformation and misinformation sometimes become very, very harmful for the stability of a country, for security of the country, for democracy, for tolerance, for a harmonious relationship between different sections of the people. It becomes a very big risk. We all know that it's not only an experience of Bangladesh, it's happening in many parts of the world. And I think, in my belief, I myself was a journalist. My first profession was journalism, and I was a reporter of Weekly, a very well-known weekly in Bangladesh. The Bangladeshi people of my age or older, you know the name Vichitra. And at that time, when we made a story, we used to anxiously wait for rejoinders. And if rejoinders came, our editors became very angry with us, very dissatisfied. What have you written? Why there are so many rejoinders? And you have to give a befitting reply to the rejoinders. If you fail to do that, it means that you are not doing objective journalism. So this was the only way we tried to be very accurate and very much committed to good journalism. And we tried our best to write correct information, to make correct interpretation, to talk to the most credible sources, and to cross-check all the information we received. But now we have entered a digital age. There is huge pressure. Everyone has become a journalist. Everyone has become an opinion maker. And everyone has become a big fan of sensation or breaking news. And people have no time to wait to look at the authenticity of the news. And everyone has access to social platform. It becomes so easy for anyone to write something on anybody. So, I mean, it becomes very hard for people sometimes to distinguish what is truth or what is false. And in such a period, the needs for objective journalism, good journalism, honest journalism has become much more crucial. Honest journalism can ensure that the people who are spreading disinformation and misinformation, they are not controlling the tone of the society. They are not creating much noise, or they are not creating instability. And by honest journalism, we know the copybook of honest journalism. You have to be honest in your soul. You have to talk to the credible source. You have to cross-check all the information. You have to wait. You have to, take interview of the person against whom you are writing something. These are the basics of honest journalism. And nowadays, we feel that, and there are other ways of ensuring that you are doing objective journalism. Like we have fact-checking, and we also have collaboration between different news houses, media houses, and we also have the, ways of verifying whether a photo or picture which is published is genuine picture or not. In short, I think we have much more responsibility to ensure that there is good journalism, there is honest journalism, and I don't know, there are many other ways by which professional journalism or the media experts could tell you by which you can confront or you can address the problem of misinformation or disinformation. I'm sure there are lectures after my ministerial speech, and people expert on these issues. They will speak, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing them and to understand what are the ways or in which ways we can address this problem of misinformation and disinformation and also ensure access to information. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insightful discussion. We are overwhelmed with them. So, the next session is Truth in the Crossfire, Navigating Journalism in the Age of Disinformation. The very relative thing what the sir has explained now. In the Indo-Pacific region, the disinformation has increasingly become a strategic tool for shaping public opinion and destabilization political landscape. To discuss this matter regarding the disinformation in the Pacific area, now I am honored to welcome on the stage to Leo Weger, Miraj Ahmed Chaudhry, Raju Mahajan, Sheila Tasnim Haq, Siddharth Badrajaran, and Laura Laruchia. Please welcome to the stage.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, thank you to Azif Nazrul to the all information he provided us about disinformation. It's an important topic we will discuss with our estimated speaker. And for me, it's a real pleasure to welcome to this session and of the Bay of Bengal conversation. My name is Laura Larocchia, and I work as a marketing and operation manager in Diesel Consulting. It is a consulting boutique in the south of Italy. As communication and marketing specialist, for me I'm honored to talk about this, to be moderator of this panel, because this information for who work in communication and digital files is is one of the top challenges, and I look forward to discuss it with our speaker and with you. So first of all, I will start presenting our speaker. First, Miraj Ahmed Chaudhry, Managing Director at Digital Rights in Bangladesh, who has a deep experience in digital rights and in disinformation. Then Raju Majara, Principal and Managing Attorney at Majara Law, who will talk about the media governance. Then Leo Weger, Editor at Zenit Magazine in Germany, known for its insightful analysis of global and regional issues. And then Siddharth Varadarajan, Editor at The Wire in India, in Delhi, one of the leading voices in the independent journalism. And last but not least, Sheila Tasnim Haq, Senior Governance Specialist at UNDP, Bangladesh, who focuses on governance and policy. So before to leave the words to our speaker, I will spend a few words on the topic. Our session is called Truth in the Crossfire, Navigating Journalism in the Age of Disinformation. And of course, maybe all of us as a specialist of communication, of journalism, is a topic that affects our works daily. But disinformation is a challenge that affects all of us because it affects all the information we touch every day. And especially in the Indo-Pacific region, disinformation has become a powerful tool for shaping opinion and destabilizing political situation. We've seen how during the recent election in Philippines, disinformation influenced voters through fake news, and in other countries provides the beginning of crisis. So that means that the impact of disinformation is serious, and it can damage trust in institutions, create social tension, and manipulate public opinion. Journalists today face a difficult task of providing accurate information and select this information in a digital world full of challenges and in a rapid change. So in this conversation, I would like to answer to some questions. First, who are different actors in this information? Then, what challenge journalists, government can face to combat it? And then, how can news organization and digital platform strengthen their credibility and reliability? So, I would like to start to give some questions to our speaker, starting from Miraj Ahmed. And I will start talking about the situation in Bangladesh. So I would like to ask you, what are the most significant disinformation trends you have observed in Bangladesh and in the wider region in the recent years? Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you, distinguished guests and attendees, everyone. I think when we try to understand this information, one of the most important thing is to realize that lies are part of a social construct. So historically, people tell lies, and lies are part of our political process. Lies are part of our society, and lies are part of, like in every day of our social life, people tell lies in different ways. But why disinformation or misinformation in a digital world is so important? Because the digital technologies created industry of falsehoods. So now disinformation is an industry. There are people who coordinate network to produce disinformation to gain political advantage, economic advantage, or say their advantage on the basis of their belief systems. It can be religious, it can be social, it can be various other issues related to. So disinformation has been industrialized. That is first thing. That said, when it comes to trend, I think one of the significant factors that has evolved so far due to the advent of social media is that those who have more power and those who have more money, or those who have either of them or both, can influence social discourse through disinformation in various ways. The more power you have or more money you have, you can produce and sway public opinion through different narratives in a modern world. This is why we see during elections there are rise of disinformation. During political conflicts, we see a rise in disinformation. During religious conflicts, we see a sharp rise in disinformation. So one of the major contribution of disinformation in our society is its polarizing factor. Whatever is polarized, whatever polarizes our society, disinformation plays a direct role in our society, in that particular area. So politics has become a polarizing factor, and disinformation amplifies it. Religion has become a polarizing factor, and disinformation amplifies it. But when it comes to industrialization of disinformation, traditionally what we would see is that there are political actors who drives, produce, and amplifies it. There are religious or philosophy-driven, philosophy-motivated actors like religious actors who drive, amplify misinformation and disinformation based on their political ideology. But with the advent of social media and their monetization scheme and algorithms, what we see nowadays, there are monetized actors. That said, they are financially motivated actors. They spread disinformation and misinformation to spread falsehood, but also to earn money. So they can be hired. They can be hired by political parties. They can be hired by powerful business entities, corporate interests, foreign influence organizations. So this industry is largely served by the algorithmic amplification of platforms that often we misunderstand when we see the trends in misinformation and disinformation in all of the countries in the region. Having said that, giving this backdrop, even in Bangladesh and in India, we have seen how disinformation played out in different elections. For example, in Bangladesh, sometimes you will see minorities are under attack, no? So before the elections and political events. In India, minorities were under attack during their elections as well. No, there was Islamophobia. So why this comes? Because religion is a polarizing factor, and during election it plays a very strong role, and it really is being used to polarize the society further to generate vote or consensus or support to a particular political opinion. No? So we also see targeted attacks on person. Often disinformation is considered as only negative information, but often we see disinformation is being spread to create a divine identity among a political party that this is probably the best person in the world, you should vote for him. Because disinformation often creates to build a person's persona, which is false. No? So it has various phases, but to be frank, the most alarming part of disinformation is how it changes democratic narratives and how it really stoke fear before democratic elections and other periods, so that the society become more polarized and the radical forces, authoritarian forces, take advantage of it. So I think in the contemporary discussion of disinformation, the most important factor is who is funding disinformation and how, and of course, how platforms are contributing to this amplification of disinformation, because they are also profiting from it, and how political actors are weaponizing disinformation and platforms to sway public opinion and impact the democratic processes, also influence operations. I would like to stop there. If it talks about trends, maybe you have further questions later, no? Is it okay, Laura? Okay.
Thank you for this first look that helped us to understand the overview of the situation of disinformation with a deep dive in Bangladesh, and especially appreciate the look about the role also of social media that really characterize the spread of disinformation and the digital era we live in. Thank you. So now I would like to turn to Raju Mahajan, and I would like to ask you, in your point of view, in your opinion, what are the responsibility of this digital platform and even of the government when it comes to protecting user both from disinformation and protecting his own data?
Thank you very much. You heard from Dr. Asif Nazrul, our honorable advisor. He is a lawyer and he is also a journalist.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. You just heard from Dr. Asif Nazrul, our honorable advisor. He's a lawyer and also he was a journalist before. Similarly, I was a journalist before I'm a lawyer. So today I'm going to talk more from a journalistic and also legal point of view. And I will try to focus more on the governance side of media because most of the time we do not address governance issues regarding media. So the interesting part is when we talk about digital platform, nowadays everything is digital. Like in our television, our radio, newspaper, cinema, even like a podcast and everything, like YouTube, Facebook, so all the social media, everything is digital. So when we talk about digital media, we basically talk about everything. So to address the spread of misinformation, disinformation, I have some proposals. So after this panel discussion, I have some copies of my proposals. If any of you are interested, I can give a copy. This is kind of my proposal to all of you. So I think, the way doctors and lawyers and pharmacists, they are like a licensed profession. I think journalists should be licensed profession too. There should be a minimum requirement of education. There should be ethics education. There should be like a licensing exam. Those who pass this licensing exam, they will be identified as journalists, and then they can work as a journalist. By doing this, we can ensure that those who are working as a journalist, they are following certain guidelines and they are not doing any harm to the society by spreading misinformation and disinformation. Previously, not only in Bangladesh, in many other countries, we have seen that a lot of journalists, they do not work for the people. They work for the media house they work for, and most of the media house are owned by, corporate companies and also like a lot of political parties. So those journalists, they basically work as a PR for different corporations or like a government or like a political parties. So I think a licensing mechanism, like a registration mechanism, can bring some justice to the, it can help, reduce misinformation and disinformation. My next proposal is, I think government should encourage non-profit media. I think in Bangladesh, most of the media at this moment are for-profit corporations or owned by the government. I see some non-profit media in America, also in Europe. So I think, like for example, if I give you an example, let's say 3 or 4 journalists, they come together and they form a non-profit organization. And the purpose of this non-profit organization is to work as a media. I think by doing this, this non-profit media, they can be accountable to the people, not to the any kind of business interest or other thing. And to help promote this kind of initiative, government can give them some tax break, some subsidies, and some other way to encourage them. And also people, I humbly request people to pay for the news. I know that a lot of news organizations, they struggle to make money because people has a tendency to get free information. Nothing is free in this world. If you do not pay for anything, someone else is paying for that, and the person who are going to pay for your information, they have some interest. So people also have responsibility to pay for the source of the information so that you know that the information you're getting is catered to you, not for some other purposes. My next proposal is, for-profit media, like, owned by a corporation or other thing, there should be some, let me read it from my, for-profit mass media's corporate good governance must be ensured by proper reporting and monitoring mechanism. Most of the for-profit media here in Bangladesh and also many parts of the world, there is no proper governance system. We do not know who is the president, and the other stakeholders of this for-profit corporation. So they are not, there's not enough proper reporting mechanism and also monitoring whether they are actually doing their job as a media. My another proposal is that, as I said, a lot of media house, they are kind of a propaganda machine by either government or political parties or some corporate organizations. So there should be a totally separate legal mechanism for a mass media and public relation media. If a television channel work as a public relation outlet for the corporate house owned by this media, then we should treat them as a public relation company. It's not a mass media. So the difference between mass media and public relation media is not defined very well, not only in Bangladesh, and also many parts of the world. So my proposal would be to make this make this difference clear so that people understand which one is a mass media and which one is a public relation media. My another proposal, this is specific to Bangladesh. I know there is a government radio channel, it's called Bangladesh Betar. So there's also a government radio channel in America, we call it NPR. So I would like Bangladesh Betar to follow NPR's governance style. So I'm not going to talk detail about NPR's governance style because that will take a long time, but my recommendation to all the responsible person here, you can study the governance mechanism of NPR, and I think Bangladesh Betar not only follow the governance style, also the way they use like a modern technology, latest technology to reach to the people, Bangladesh Betar can do that. My another proposal is, there's a government-owned television here in Bangladesh. It's called BTV, Bangladesh Television. I don't think Bangladesh government needs a television channel. It's just a waste of taxpayers' money. So my proposal would be to shut down BTV and save that money and use it for some other purpose. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your claps. So and also, as she said, digital platforms. Everything is digital nowadays. So I am a big believer of freedom of speech, freedom of press. So people should be allowed to talk anything that they like within the legal framework. And the job of the government would protect these people from foreign entities and bad people. Government should not suppress any free speech, not only in Bangladesh, anywhere in the world. Like, if I give you example of America, a lot of Russian organization, like Iranian organization, North Korean organization, they try to infiltrate through social media like Facebook, YouTube, and they try to influence our election, our society. So the job of the government is to stop these foreign spies, foreign entities to influence our election and other things. But the government should ensure that the people of that country, like people of Bangladesh, they should be able to express their opinion, even though it goes against the government. So that's my opinion about digital platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Raju. Thank you for your legal perspective. It's very useful for this conversation. And you talk a lot about government, and you talk about what we can do, especially in a local area. But in the interconnected world we live in, do you think that could be more efficient, or could be a solution maybe in the future to have a sort of international laws that help to solve this the problem of disinformation?
Are you asking the question to me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Can you ask again?
Yeah. If in your perspective, from since you talk about governance point of view and legal perspective, if maybe in the future you think that international law that help to stop the spread of disinformation can be a solution that we can adopt or not?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a very good question. So let me tell you about America. I'm from America, even though I was born and raised in Bangladesh. So we have two layers of government. One is a state government and one is a federal government. So freedom of speech is ensured by the federal constitution, meaning federal government. And this is a very, very common conflict all the time. We see that some of the speech that is allowed by the federal government but not allowed by the state government. But since federal government has more power, they trumps the state laws and other things. So on a whole, the American freedom of speech part is dominated by the federal constitution, federal laws, federal judicial system. Now, the world, our current world is a very global platform. So today, let's say I'm posting something in Bangladesh, but I have friends in America, I have friends in Europe, South America, China, India, everywhere. So my friends, they can see it, they can give reaction like love reaction, like reaction, angry reaction. So since the world is coming together as a global village, I think we have to form some kind of international code. I know there's like an international criminal code, international civil code, but they're not functioning at this moment as we want. And there's a lot of challenges to do that. It's not very easy because in the current world order, our sovereign entity is the state, the country. There is no international organization that has the sovereign authority. So if you want to implement an international law governing freedom of speech, that will be very difficult. Because let me give you an example. In America, LGBTQ rights are well established. You cannot say anything bad about them. That would be hate speech. On the other hand, if you go to, let's say, Russia, Iran, or many other part of the world, LGBTQ rights are not established like, Europe or America. So you cannot express your opinion for them in those countries. Now, if there is any unified law for the whole world, as international law, it would be very difficult to implement that law. Also, law doesn't work by itself. Law needs law enforcement. So, police and other law enforcement entities. So there is no international, there's the Interpol, but Interpol is not an independent organization. It consists of local police departments. So this is a good proposal to have an international court, international law to govern free speech, freedom of speech, freedom of press and media. However, I don't think that is going to happen within very short time, like at least not within 50 years, but this is a good proposal. So what we can actually do is we can advocate. Like especially those countries, they do not ensure freedom of speech and freedom of press for their people. We as a global citizen, we can go and advocate for freedom of speech in those countries and try to make some kind of similarities with Western world. And I think that is more pragmatic at this moment rather than trying to form a court or trying to implement like international law.
Yeah, so it's a long way, but it's something we can think about. Thank you again for your, especially for your solution approach oriented. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now, next, Leo. Always talking about the international context. I would like to ask you, how does the rise of disinformation affect the international information? Since, as I mentioned before, our world is interconnected, globalization. So, what do you think?
Thank you so much for your great question. Let me connect that maybe to Bangladesh and the revolution in Bangladesh and how international media were able or failed to report on that. But before I start with that, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the team of CGS and especially actually the people in the second and third row, Generation Z, Gen Z, who did a lot of good work here in a very short amount of time, and I'm really appreciating that. So thank you for that. 2 months, I think, and a lot of hard work, and you put it all together. Thank you. So what I wanted to say is basically, there are lots of challenges for media and reporting at the moment, and they have a logical effect on reporting, on international reporting, on international events. For example, on the revolution in Bangladesh. So let me start with issues of journalism first. So one issue, of course, is the rise of AI-generated journalism. What does it mean? It means that there are a lot of videos and images produced that are of questionable origin, are confusing, are often falsified, which means that the very essence of what is meant by reality is under pressure. We hardly know sometimes. It takes a lot of media literacy to actually be able to differentiate AI, fake news, disinformation from reality. This has a huge impact on journalism all over the world and on media consumption. So disinformation is, of course, closely linked to that. And I think it's fair to say that there's an unprecedented amount of orchestrated disinformation campaigns happening in the world at the moment. Orchestrated disinformation campaigns are nothing new, they always happen, but I think at the moment we really see an unprecedented amount in the world. And there's I don't know if you know the company Statista. It's a German company that creates kind of statistics basically online, and they have an interesting statistic that 40% of respondents globally admitted to accidentally sharing fake news with others. So this is really showing the amount of the problem. It's huge all over the world. And this leads to another problem, which is the lost in trust in media. We see this everywhere. There are lots of statistics around from the US, from the Indo-Pacific, from Germany as well, where I come from, that traditional media are really losing a lot of trust. And this has exacerbated massively over the last 2 to 3 years from, for example, in the US, from more than 50% of trust levels to just 26% of trust in media. This has a huge effect as well, and is also, again, exacerbated by something else, which is the lesser and lesser amount of money that is in journalism. So this has a lot of effect. I mean, if you want to make money in media, you're not going to join a newspaper today, obviously, but you're going to be an influencer. But this really alters the, connection between the media and the persons that you're reporting about, So obviously, influencers are much more willing, usually, to report positively on the subject that they're covering, because they also have much less incentives, or their incentives are different ones, and this has also a huge impact. Another impact is, of course, that international media houses are closing down their presences all over the world. There are less and less correspondents around, and then, of course, media and information is disseminated and checked, consumed on platforms like X. What is X? X is formerly Twitter, owned by Elon Musk, who has really altered personally, very much personally, the information that people receive all over the world. Huge impact on the information that people all over the world receive, and it's basically one single person. I mean, there's a joke in Berlin, because he happened to buy X right after a visit to Berlin. He has a Tesla factory right around the corner, and he did not get into a nightclub in Berlin, a famous one called Berghain. And he was, mocked all over X, all over Twitter at that time for that. And then he just bought it. Probably it was not connected, but it really changed everything, because suddenly he could really much more control the information that was presented about him. So what does this mean for example, international media coverage on a situation like the revolution in Bangladesh? First, access. Less money, less correspondence, less access, because, for example, visa regimes are increasingly restrictive for journalists. In many places, media have to be embedded with military or government, which heavily affects reporting as well. You obviously have a bias if you're embedded with an armed force active in a conflict, so this makes a huge difference as well. Then disinformation. I mean, if we think about disinformation in Bangladesh, obviously there was a lot of misinformation circulating, flying around the internet during the revolution and afterwards. I mean, we talked about that already, but you see one picture of Americans in St. Martin's Island, you might have questions about the authenticity or whether this really is relevant for what's happening in Bangladesh. But if your entire timeline is flooded with this information, let that sink in. You slowly start thinking about, maybe there's something true about this, maybe the Americans are behind this, maybe this could be true, even though you later might find out that the pictures that were used were actually not from St. Martin's in Bangladesh, but from St. Martin Island in the Caribbean. This is really, I think, something that happened. I mean, there were some accounts that were doing that. And this has an effect, especially if you can't verify information because you don't have access. And so quantity matters, money matters, because essentially you need a lot of money to disseminate vast amounts of orchestrated fake news. So if you want to go behind that, that's also a question of resources. And very difficult to verify information. And if you think about the July massacre, for example, there are factors like the internet blockade that the government implemented after a very, very bloody protest the day before. And this worked, of course, there was very little access for international journalists to actually verify what happened on the streets of Dhaka and other places of Bangladesh in that very moment, because this was a very effective tool in suppressing the amount of police violence that took place, and it made it more difficult for international journalists to unveil the truth. Another example is that, for example, the government also claims some things. For example, that they only used, the police forces only used rubber bullets instead of proper actual bullets, which they used if there's no access to the country and there's no internet blockade, and if there's an internet blockade and you can't verify information. So this all makes things more complicated. Does it mean that it's impossible to report? No, it was not. I can tell from my own personal experience it's possible to report. We had many stories on the events in Bangladesh, in Germany, including on front pages of national newspapers, but it makes it more complicated. However, I think if, eventually you need to resort to more old school techniques of journalism, it's more and more of an uphill battle to, uncover the truth, but the truth can prevail and will eventually make its way through international audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo. As you mentioned, I agree. Probably the first solution for disinformation is that people has to learn, all of us have to learn how to recognize fake news and not share with other people. Of course, it's not easy, but maybe something that we can do all together, and that can be the first step of solution of the spread of disinformation.
Of course, and I think this also means, of course, that, this should be part of school curricula, right, all over the world, yeah, that people learn how to handle information, how to verify information, yeah, how to deal with, technologies to actually make an ethical use of them. So yeah, I think this is very crucial, and this is also, of course, important for think tanks, for NGOs, for civil society to really work on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. And now, I will give some, let's hear from Siddharth and his point of view. I would like to have a deep dive about the political situation and the propaganda. So I would like to ask you how the use of how was the use of the information in India for the propaganda? What's the situation?
Thank you for that question, and thank you to CGS for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be in Dhaka, post-revolutionary Dhaka. And I'm very, very happy to be here. When we speak of the topic of disinformation, it's important to bear in mind that in virtually every country in the world, disinformation does not fall from the sky and is not the product, overwhelmingly, the product of guys who live in their basements, working alone with some sinister objective. The bulk of disinformation coursing through the information sewers of the world originate with governments. They originate with ruling political parties, they originate with very powerful sectors. And this is something we often lose sight of. The technology of dissemination has changed. So disinformation can be injected into the worldwide information circuitry and be made to spread very fast. The velocity of circulation is much higher than anything we've seen before. But the basic premise that disinformation is a central part of the toolkit of political parties, of governments, has not changed. So while I think it's important that we talk about disinformation and we have heightened awareness of topics like fake news and so on and so forth, this isn't really such a new problem as far as the world is concerned. We're just dealing with a different technological manifestation of it. And, we need to find ways to do that, obviously. But it's not something that we need to get unduly worried about or, reach a point where we feel helpless at combating disinformation and misinformation on this scale. The second point is that the spread of disinformation in a conscious fashion almost always is accompanied by the criminalization or delegitimization of lawful speech. In India, it shouldn't come as any surprise that the same ruling party, the same government, which is the source of so much of disinformation, particularly at election time, and I'll speak about that in a second, has also taken upon itself the task of passing new laws, rules, drafting new regulations that make it much more difficult to exercise legitimate free speech, and they do so by criminalizing free speech. And regrettably, this isn't something that's happening only in India, in many countries, including in countries that, in places like Bangladesh and India, we always used to have a certain view that the United Kingdom is has a much more sensible approach to freedom of speech than we do in our part of the world. Even there now you see the misuse of anti-terrorism legislation in order to curb certain kinds of speech critical of Israel. And this is the new reality. In India, the government went so far as to legislate or to create new rules for the Information Technology Act that would empower government departments to declare a certain piece of news fake and to then order its deletion or removal, or to put pressure on social media intermediaries to do that dirty work by threatening them with the withdrawal of their safe harbor protections. So in other words, if, let's say, the Ministry of Statistics decides that a certain article which critiques the government's macroeconomic data, if the Ministry of Statistics says that this article is fake, then the rule was structured in such a way as to get the social media intermediaries, Twitter, Facebook, and so on, to delete that content and ensure it doesn't circulate. Fortunately, some of us went to court in India and we were able to put a stop, have a stay put on that attempt to label fake news and to give government that power. But the aim of the government still remains. And I'm mentioning this because these are two sides of the same coin. The same Prime Minister who can give an interview in the middle of the last Lok Sabha election campaign where he cites very, very dubious and dodgy a population report to claim that in India the population of Hindus, the percentage of Hindus is coming down and eventually this country may not be Hindu. Completely unscientific, bogus data, and the Prime Minister can speak about this and give an interview and promote this idea in the middle of an election campaign, and the same Prime Minister wants to introduce rules which will declare other speech and other reports as fake. It's breathtaking. The idea that politicians think they can get away with this. We are right now in the midst of an election campaign for two important states in India, Maharashtra and Jharkhand. And it may surprise the audience here that Bangladesh and Bangladeshis have become an important issue in Jharkhand. Of course, they don't use the word Bangladeshi. We have a very peculiar term in India to refer to undocumented migrants, and that term is infiltrator. I don't know how many of you have heard the term infiltrator or know what it would like. In the normal course, the word infiltrator is meant to conjure up the idea of a man crossing the border with a gun in order to perpetrate some act of violence. Here, an undocumented migrant is called an infiltrator. The government has no data or information about the number of people who are crossing the border without documents. It has no data about the number of people who have entered Jharkhand purportedly from Bangladesh. Jharkhand does not even have a border with Bangladesh. The person in charge of the Indian border is the Home Minister of India, who is the one talking about the danger of unchecked migration. And this is fake. This is a textbook example of disinformation. Weaponizing disinformation in order to spread fear, insecurity, to polarize the people on religious lines. And to imagine that this is happening from people in authority, who then in turn are attempting to limit and circumscribe the right of others to speak and to publish. This tells you the true nature of the crisis. I was looking at Donald Trump's 5-point agenda on what he says protecting free speech, and there's some interesting points there. For example, and I think if the US government and governments around the world were to follow that, for example, he says no government department should be in the business of certifying what is acceptable and what is not acceptable speech. Fine, excellent. But he then goes on to say that there should be limits, for example, on quote-unquote promoting terrorism. Now, if the idea of promoting terrorism is understood in a rational and a narrow way, nobody would have any objection. But more often than not, terms such as this are used in order to brand criticism, brand certain arguments, brand certain forms of speech as illegitimate, as illegal, and as terrorist. So I think that we are passing through a very difficult stage today. And I fear that, I mean, not that we can avoid talking about disinformation and fake news, but governments around the world have weaponized the concept, weaponized the fight against fake news in order to try to curb legitimate expression. And I would say, given, if we have to pick, if Sophie were to make a choice between allowing fake news or, civil society finding its own way to deal with disinformation on the one hand, and empowering politicians like Donald Trump or Narendra Modi or Sheikh Hasina or anybody else of that kind to decide what's fake and what's not, what is disinformation or what's not, it would be far better to let civil society, leave them in charge and not empower politicians. I'll stop there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. In a sentence or in 2-3 words, it's is hardest to rebuild the trust of people about social media or about institutions?
No, there's a great decline in public trust in the media across the world.
Okay,
right?
thank you.
And this is something that, as a journalist, that worries me, and we have to find ways of dealing with it. And it's not as if we don't have answers, but this is a big challenge for the media. But this is a challenge that we have to confront without looking to the government to create regulations or rules that would eventually harm freedom of the press.
Thank you very much. And really, it was very inspiring, the situation about propaganda, political way. This is a really bad use of information and fake news. So thank you for this precious point of view. And now, last but not least, I would like to ask something to Sheila. Sheila, I would like to move from political to governance about company, even in the private sector. I would like to know from your perspective, what's the government framework of disinformation in Bangladesh? So now we are returning to Bangladesh after a little round around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Let me also thank CGS, and we are also part of this Bay of Bengal. It's like 3 consecutive years that Bay of Bengal has been held in Bangladesh, and I think we from UNDP were partner of this discussion from the onset of this Bay of Bengal discussion. But I think that if I would be interested myself and also ask CGS colleagues to see the discussion on the misinformation last year and talking about this misinformation this year, how the landscape is also changing our own thinking pattern or looking into the misinformation. Because the world has changed, the geopolitics has changed, Bangladesh has also changed. So it's important, I think, that when you talk about governance, unfortunately we cannot leave the politics out of it, but I think that we see it more from a framework, how we take it to the broader landscape. Before I start, I was watching the room, and I think that, like me, everybody was looking into the drone. I'm sure that you all are. I was. So this could be another tool of misinformation, who knows? But like exactly what we are seeing in the misinformation is the whole AI that one of our panelists was talking about. So I think that when we talk about misinformation, disinformation, the tools that we are also seeing, how it's also impacting the mindset, the whole issue of the narrative, how this deep fake news is also changing the mindset of an individual. So it's very important when you talk about the framework, but before that, let me also look into some of the areas that we have been talking about, disinformation, misinformation, which I also think that is very much transboundary in nature. So it doesn't stay within the certain periphery of a nation and state. It goes beyond that, as some of our panelists were saying. It's a global connectivity, it's a global citizenship. So there are a lot of issues that are also evolving in you talk about the misinformation, disinformation. But I think this also is important to understand the definition a bit of it, how we define it. And also one of the things that we certain time we talk about it, but not so much, how this disinformation, misinformation globally is also increasing the whole issue on the hate speech. This is very much interrelated. So it's very important, the role of the state, the role of the civil society, the role of the private sector to come together when you talk about a framework. So if you look into the framework, what really exists to look into this whole misinformation, disinformation landscape, as we have seen in Bangladesh, I will not repeat, but I'll also sort of just have a quick pick on some of the issues that we picked in 2023, 2024, and of course the revolution that we have seen. It's a digital battleground, if say quote unquote. So how the digital battleground it is. So as you see that a lot of troll have been there, a lot of misinformation has been there. Again, like what is the misinformation? It's talking about the narrative. It could be religious narrative, it could be a cultural narrative, it could be more of an understanding of the misogynistic understanding as well. So these are the evolving areas that we see in the realm of misinformation and disinformation. So if you look into who are those institutions or stakeholders looking into that, we are talking about the fact checkers, we are talking about the media, we are talking about the social platforms, talking about Facebook, Meta, the Twitter. There are other groups as well that we know that use different other methods and tools to spread different misinformation. If you look into the more the religious perspective, the extremist view that we have picked up over the years. We also have seen the subscription of certain channels have also increased in the last couple of months in Bangladesh as well. So it's very important how we monitor that, how we should be also a bit conscious about it. In fact, if you talk about, again, going back to the fact checkers, we talk about a lot on debunking the misinformation. But again, you see in the age of, or the age of technology, it's very difficult to debunk the misinformation, disinformation as well. because the fact checkers community globally they're there, but they're also very limited in numbers. There's also issue of capacity, the issue of their framework as well, how the fact checkers will be performing. There are also sort of other stakeholders like the social media platform that we are all very much looking into. So that's very important, but if I come back to the framework itself, it's very difficult when you talk about how you debunk the misinformation. So let's look into how preemptive measures could be taken to look into the tackling the misinformation. It is very important to have a preemptive strategies from all of us to understand how we can sort of, before we even debunk it, it's very important the social media, all the actors we talked about should come together and address those issues. Secondly, it's very important the democratic institution to be more effective. The more democratic institution are effective, the accountability mechanism are established, grievance redressal mechanism. I think that in this coming 3 days, we'll be talking about anti-corruptions. We're talking about different other areas where we also talk about different government institution and mechanism that exist. So it's all interrelated. This is not separated. As we have seen in June and July, in August, how people's aspiration came all together, because you have to have a certain platform that you can talk about your understanding, your grievances, which needs to have a platform itself. So it's very important, it's interlinked. But if you look into the whole landscape of the global politics, it's of course certain part is grievance, but also understanding how you navigate the politics in different directions. So it's very important in that landscape to understand where we stand with that. So on the framework, again coming back, Bangladesh needs to also look into some of those acts that exist, the Digital Security Act, Open Governance Act, Governance Data Act. So there are a couple of acts that already exist. There's also in discussion on the AI policy, that's a framework that UNDP is helping the government to frame it for the last couple of months. So we are in the area where we are looking into the AI, which is very much important to tackle those misinformation and disinformation. And also the social cohesion part, I think that's very important, where we bring the citizen into the discussion. The Gen Z population need to have a more digital literacy of how to use those information, not as a misinformation, but information to change the perspective, change the landscape, the way we want to change it, the way we want Bangladesh and the different part of the world where we have a state where people's voices matters. So that's very important. So misinformation have different tools, technology, which we cannot avoid. It will happen. The world will change. AI is happening. Who knows, some other tools would be coming in the horizon soon. But the question is that how we as a group sitting here in this platform today come together, talk about those mechanisms, and also sort of understand how the private sector, especially all the social media group, can be also looking into the social responsibility framework that they all are adhere to as well. So it's very important that the state, the civil society, and the private sector, especially the social media companies, come together, act on some of this misinformation, which also spread hate speech across the globe, and Bangladesh is not different from there at all. We have seen the transboundary nature of the misinformation. Going forward, one of our panelists was talking about our neighbor, India. It's very important that we have a BIMSTEC as a platform. We have SARC as a platform. So we should act as a nation altogether. It's beyond the boundaries, so is misinformation not a localized issue anymore. So it's very important that the governance framework within the country, the regional perspective needs also to be brought in, and also understanding the whole Indo-Pacific politics that's also emerging as the Bay of Bengal is mandated to look into and talk about it. So we put that into as a framework, not just Bangladesh as a framework in the whole misinformation and disinformation and tackling those, because hate speech, when you talk about hate speech, it doesn't stay within the boundary itself. It's a trans-boundary issue. So it's very important that we address it. Of course, different generation, the Gen Z, and I think that we should not be putting all the responsibilities on them as well. We as a state, we as a citizen, we as an individual, as the UN, we should all be coming together and go forward. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for Thank you, Sheila, for your perspective, especially on the private sector that is another actor of the society, of every society. Now, I would just take a few minutes if there's just 1-2 questions. So, yeah, please. If you can please specify to whom you can direct your question if there's a specific person. Thank you. Sorry? Can you repeat? One moment.
I have an open question. We can often see state and non-state actors around the world.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Can you speak a little bit?
We can often see government and non-state actors around the world politicizing media and manipulating information to disrupt public sentiment. How does this erosion of trust in journalism undermine democratic institutions and processes? And what role can news organizations play in restoring public faith while navigating pressures from political entities? I have another question to Mr. Siddharth specifically. After the fall of the fascist regime in Bangladesh, we have noticed many Indian outlets have been accused of spreading politically motivated disinformation, leading to a loss of trust among the Bangladeshi population. How do you think Indian media can restore faith and credibility in the future?
Good, thank you.
Both your questions are part of the same. I'll very briefly answer that. There is a serious issue of credibility, no doubt. And that's because the bulk of big media in India has abandoned the path of actually doing journalism and are quite comfortable to serve as a propaganda arm of those who are in power. So the stories that you saw, which tried to portray the revolution in Bangladesh in very negative light, I would say were inspired by the foreign policy vision of those in Delhi who had placed all their faith and their support in Sheikh Hasina and were very disappointed at the fact that she was thrown out. So, frankly, I'm not sure what we can expect from this media, because the same media which has done an act of disinformation as far as Bangladesh is concerned regularly commits the same crime within India. They will misrepresent the farmers' movement, they will misrepresent all kinds of issues in order to promote official propaganda. So I think that in Bangladesh and in India and around the world, people are turning to independent digital platforms that have more credibility for their news rather than depending on big legacy media. I think most of these channels and newspapers are beyond the possibility of any reform.
Hello everyone, I'm Noreen Sultana, studying Mass Communication and Journalism in University of Dhaka. So my question is, if fact-checking is considered a part of journalism and state-led journalism often faces credibility issues, how can the CA press wing ensure public trust in its fact-checking initiatives? A study by Lupa and IFCN signatory found that 52% of reports from Brazil contra fake lacked transparency or relied solely on government sources. Doesn't this pose a risk to transparency? The report also noted that the initiative primarily targeted disinformation related to the government's own interest. For example, when recent questions were raised about the country's law and order situation, the CA pressed facts labeled a report as misleading without providing the necessary documentation to ensure transparency and contained pro-government narratives. How do you address these concerns? And shouldn't the government focus more on promoting media literacy over fact-checking? And I'd love if anyone from the panel answers the question. Thank you so much.
Who would like to? Yeah. Please, in just
This is a very hard question.
less than 1 minute.
So, for example, government engaging in fact-checking is very problematic, locally, internationally, because in that case, government becomes the arbiter of truth. No, it is risky. But I understand because of this surge of disinformation, CA press office may have decided, because they have been victim of disinformation and they are trying to clear their own position. I understand the urge, but government-sponsored fact-checking is equally problematic in any political context. No, so because it makes, like for example, India, it was being attempted to establish by law. No, so but it is in many ways, even Indian courts say that it is unconstitutional. There are constitutional problems associated with it. Yes, I think one of the major problems globally is structural. No? So most of the countries, particularly where democracy is eroding, many is considering disinformation is a national security problem. Disinformation is not a security problem. We should not consider disinformation as a security concern. Rather than we should consider it as a social problem. No, this is part of a social contract. And how do you address that? You address that by providing more information, creating access and spread and amplification for quality information. No? And another approach is to do it, is to address it socially, is like media literacy and critical thinking capacity, so that people can question an information whether it is right or wrong, and they look for different opportunities. No? If you see it from a national security point of view, you end up with very stringent law, like in Cyber Security Act or Digital Security Act of Bangladesh. What happens is, like, when there are millions of information coming in a minute, you cannot really tackle it by law or policing. At some point, you need to tackle it by algorithms, by platforms, no? Because you cannot tackle misinformation at scale, no? With one law, with one police system. If you try to do that, you will be selective in your judgment. There will be arbitrary decisions. There will be pick and choose, like who are we going to send to jail and who we don't, no? So another way is like to fact-checking organizations, but they can only check only a very fragment of misinformation, very small fragment, because they can only check what is checkable. But there are various disinformation which is not checkable. There is no checkable information in there to debunk. That said, the propaganda, adversarial narratives, hate speech, no? So a lot of narratives remain on the online platform that can be addressed socially. And I think there is a vital role of traditional media organizations. So far, media's role has been providing facts. But media has been traditionally away from identifying that this is wrong. I think in this age of disinformation, media can have their fact-checking units and say, oh, not only by providing fact, they can also have a fact-checking unit to say that this is a very harmful disinformation and this is why we should bring it to our audience. No, there could be reporting on that. But above all, I think the problem is social. It has to be addressed socially, not from a security lens, because otherwise it will be used to stifle expression, to carve legitimate expression.
Thank you very much, and thank you all the speakers for all this insight. And if you want, for all the people who would like to interact, all the speakers are available to keep in touch, to have a conversation just here. So thank you again. This is really a topic that affects all of us, and I'm sure that start talking in a conference like this can start changing something first in each of us, and then on the government, companies, and so on and so forth. Thank you again, and enjoy the conference.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, dear speakers. Now I am inviting you all to take a group photo here. Yeah, please, from here. Be closer, please, everyone. And for the audience, please take your snacks from the oasis just outside from the place where you take the lunch. So thank you so much everyone for today. We are in for today and we will be started from tomorrow at the same time on 11 a.m. I invite you all to join us tomorrow at the same venue, same place, same time. Thank you so much and goodbye for the today.